Today my talk is entitled Thinking About Serverless. Let's start with functions. My name is Thiago Passos. I'm a solution architect at SW. This is my Twitter handle and my blog. I've got some SharePoint and MVC background. I've been working with that for quite a long time. But currently I'm in love with Azure and Angular 2 or 4 or whatever they call it nowadays. Cool. So for the agenda of today, we're going to be talking about serverless. I'll give you a bit of an overview of serverless. And then we'll go and jump straight to Azure Functions. And then I'll show you some real use cases. We'll do a bit of demo to go a bit in depth with Azure Functions, and then I'm going to summarize at the end. Cool. So serverless. What is serverless? Anyone?
Code without a server?
Yeah, despite the name, it does not involve running code without a server. It's also known as function as a service. But it's basically a cloud computing code execution model. That's a pretty big name. But basically, you put your code in the cloud and you expect that to run. As simple as that. And the beauty of it is you just pay what you run, right? You pay as you go. So if you have a function in there, you're not running, you're not paying for it. Cool, so...
Why it's called like serverless? Because anyway, like you are still running on the server, right? It's on a cloud or whatever, it's gonna be running on the server still.
Yeah, the name is a bit funny. It's basically because you don't need to manage the server, I would assume.
So you can use third-party plugins as well to get data. Maybe that's why.
You
can hit someone else's data and get it.
Yep. All right, so a bit of history. In 2006, Zinc was the first pay-as-you-go service. Then came AWS with Lambda in 2014. And in 2016, Google came with Cloud Functions, IBM with OpenWhisk, and Microsoft with Azure Functions. All right, so a bit of the pros and cons of using whatever serverless. So first, my top one would be the cost, right? And because of the model that you pay as you go, the cost will be pretty minimum if you have a service that doesn't run that often, right? So it happens quite often that we have a service in a VM in the cloud that you run just a couple of times a day, a couple of times a week. So in this case, serverless is a great choice. The other thing is you don't have any server management. So no more updates, no more patches, installations, and stuff like that. And also, it scales based on demand. So if all of a sudden you have 100 people using that function, it's going to scale up so it can handle the load. As soon as the usage goes down, it's going to scale back down. So that's pretty cool as well. So a bit of the cons. Performance. It doesn't mean that it's poorly performed. But it was designed for lightweight processes. So don't go and install like a full suite of application without inside a function, because that wasn't designed for that. Second thing is resource limits. In Azure Functions, they have a 1 gig memory limit, right? So if you're planning to run something that requires a lot of memory, Azure Functions might not be the best suited for that. And monitoring and debugging. So although Azure Functions is improving a lot in this space, monitoring and debugging, it's still, if you have your own VM, the monitoring and debugging will be better. Okay, so let's jump straight to functions now. So what is functions, Azure Functions, apart from being serverless? No.
You write down your own like some standalone sort of a thing. So for example, some payment mechanism or some email thing.
You can.
Yeah.
You can.
That's it's like running behind the scene, and you don't like need to look
not necessarily behind the scenes, but
yeah, behind the scenes, like it's like running on the VM on Azure. So
yep. All right. So if you go to the Microsoft Docs, that's the first thing that comes up. So it's a solution for easily running a small piece of code or function in the cloud, right? But what if you ask the same question to a different person, right? Not a computer. So early this year, I went to Ignite, and I had the opportunity to interview a few people. And 2 of the interviews were related to Azure Functions, right? And one of the guys were Paul Batum, who is a Microsoft manager at the Azure Functions team. And I asked him the same question, and that's what he replied. So it's all about making cloud programming easier. It's kind of the same answer, basically, but in different words, right? So they're both from Microsoft. But what if you ask to a different person altogether? So I asked John Liu, who is a SharePoint MVP, right, and former SSW employee, and he answered a completely different answer. So it's the cheapest way to run your code in the cloud, right? Have anyone done SharePoint before here? You did? How painful it is to run a code in the server. Yeah, long time ago, right? Okay, so yeah, that was when Azure Functions came in. John Liu was just like amazed, like he just loved it. Okay, but at the end of the day, it's just a piece of code that you run as a response to an event. Okay, so either this event is a HTTP request, or timer, or an item that goes into a queue. So it keeps listening to an event, and as soon as it's called, it runs. Okay, so when not to use an Azure Functions or any serverless? So as I said before, in the pros and cons, specifically in the cons, memory-intensive process is not the way to go, right? So because of the 1 gig memory limit, you should not use Azure Functions if you're thinking about it. And the other thing is stateful work. So the Azure Functions, the way it works is it spin up and spin down as soon as it's finished, right? So it doesn't keep any state. You can keep state, like going to a queue or anything like that, but the function itself doesn't keep any state. So if you put something in memory, you're not gonna get next time you run the function. So if you're thinking about something, some stateful work, you're better off going to Azure Service Fabric. Cool, so, all right, I just told you when not to use. So when should I use this Azure Functions? And that's when the use cases come in place. We've got Link Auditor that was written by SSW. It's a tool that goes to your site and find broken links. It wasn't written in Azure Functions initially, but it was moved to Azure Functions, and now it's so much faster. And yeah, people were just happy with that. And the other one is Have I Been Pwned? Anyone here has ever heard about it? By Troy Hunt, who is a regional director in Australia. So the Azure function that he put in place was in his website. He's got a mechanism to recognize breaches, right? So as soon as a breach is recognized, he sends this IP address to a queue, and the Azure function picks it up and blocks the IP address to his website, which is pretty cool. If you want to know more about it, he wrote a whole blog post about it, including the source code. So if you're interested in this idea, just go there and have a look. All right, so let's go to the demo now. But before I start the demo, I just want to describe a little bit on what I want to achieve today here. So I want to show you the whole process of development, debugging, deploying. But first, I want to go to Azure Portal, create everything from there. And then what I want to do is I want to switch to my local environment, create using the CLI, which is now called Core Tools for some reason. So you can have an idea on what the difference is between using the portal and using the CLI. Okay, so let's go straight to the portal now. All right, so let me just spin that off here. Who here has used the Azure Portal before? Cool. And who here has ever created a Azure function in the portal? Cool. All right, let me just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so first of all, what I need to do is I need to create a function app, right? And a function app is basically a container that's going to hold all my functions together. So I can have multiple functions within this function app, right? So let's go and create a new function app here.
Sorry, is it a kind of gateway?
The function app?
Yeah.
Um,
The actual function.
No, it's not the actual function. It's a container to hold all your functions. It's not exactly a gateway. It's just a container to hold all of them. All right. Okay, so let me give a name here, function demo cd. Or unique. Okay, I'm gonna choose an existing resource group. I'm gonna put that in the Southeast Asia. I'm gonna use an existing storage, and that's it. All right, so while this is being created, anyone has any question so far?
Yeah. So you said it's like pay and go.
Mhm.
So if somebody tried to do DDoS and just hit your service a couple of times, like constantly, what would happen? You should pay for those DDoS.
Sorry, say it again.
DDoS attack, I mean. Yeah.
Denial of service. So if someone, once you've got your app there, if you've got an HTTP
Mm-hmm.
triggered function, I guess the question is, what's to stop someone from outside just hammering it intentionally?
All right, so if it's someone just repeating the question here, if someone's hitting your site multiple times, if you're going to pay for it, yes, you're going to pay for it. Because, yeah, someone is hitting your function and the function is running, right? There are a few ways to avoid that. Have you used Cloudflare? So Cloudflare is kind of a gateway. So you can set up your DNS to go through Cloudflare before and then go to Azure Functions. But then you have to have a custom domain for that. And what it does, it's gonna cache all the calls, right? So if you've got a function and you're passing the same parameter, you're gonna return pretty much the same result. So you can use that to avoid this kind of stuff.
You can put cores on it as well.
Sorry?
Cores.
Cores?
Yeah,
Cross-origin resource planning, sharing. Yes, you can, but cores wouldn't avoid that. You can still call the function. You would avoid calling that from a JavaScript or something like that. But if you're calling directly, it's not gonna avoid. Does it make sense? Okay, so the function is created now, I assume. The function app, let me just go there and check it out. Should be somewhere.
Sometimes very hard to find things.
Yes, sometimes it's a bit funky. Yeah, gotta agree. Okay, who here has already seen this view here, apart from the one who created? Yeah, pretty much the same people. Okay, so when you create a function app, that's what you're gonna see, right? On the left-hand side, you see all your functions, proxies and slots. I'm gonna cover proxies and slots a bit later today. In the middle here, we have some overview of your function app, subscription, URL, pricing, tier, and this kind of stuff. In the settings, you can enable and disable some features within your function app. In the platform features, you can configure like some app settings, deployment options, like continuous integration, you can do that. SSL, custom domains, cores, which is the cross-origin resource sharing we were talking about. Yeah, just naming a few. And in the API definition, which is still in preview, to be used with Swagger. And anyone here is using Swagger? Yeah. All right, so if you haven't used Swagger before, just go and check it out. So what this does, this is going to create a definition so you can use in Swagger. Swagger is going to read that definition and it's going to create a UI for your API endpoints. So you can use for functions, you can use for your own API. So you generate that definition and Swagger will create a nice UI for you to go and test all the endpoints. So you can just like put the parameters and then post or get or do whatever there. So that's pretty cool. Okay, but let's go and create a function now. So I'm just gonna go and click on the plus button, and as soon as you do that, since I created my function app the first time, you're gonna have this quick start here, which you can choose between 3 scenarios and 3 languages, right? I'm not gonna use that. I'm gonna go to create your own custom function. And if I choose that, I'm gonna be able to select between several languages. In this case, I'm gonna demo the C# language. And in this scenario, between all of them, I'm gonna get API. All right, I'm gonna create a simple HP trigger function here. Okay, I'll give it a name. From Portal. And I don't need to set anything at this level here, but I'm just gonna set to anonymous, so I don't need to handle any of the tokens. So you can set up the tokens in the functions if you want, but I don't want to set up anything right now. So let's go and create a function. Shouldn't take too long to create a function. All right. So that's the real function, right? So that's the real code that's gonna run as soon as you hit that endpoint. And it's pretty much a single function that is called when you hit that endpoint, right? So if I go and get the function URL here, and I go to another tab and run, it's working, right? It's actually failing because I'm not passing the parameter that's required, but other than that, it's working. Okay. All right, so at the bottom here, we have some logs. So every time the function is run, you see the logs coming up here. Also the logs that I'm putting in the function itself. On the left-hand side, I've got these integrate, manage, and monitor sections here. The integrate, as I said before, the function is a piece of code that's gonna run as a response to an event, right? The integrate, you can set up all the triggers, which is the event. And you also can set up the inputs and outputs. An input can be anything that you wanna bring to your function when you run the function, right? So it can be a blob storage, it can be a document DB, can be a storage queue or anything like that. So if you run the function and you expect to bring some data across as well to use in that function, that's where you're gonna put in the input. And the output is basically anything that's gonna go out, right? It can be a blob storage as well, it can be a storage queue or anything like that. So anything that you wanna output after the function is run, that's what you're gonna use. Right now we only have this trigger as the HP request, which is also an input, and the output, which is the HP response, right? So in the request here, I can set up the allowed HP methods if I want. The request parameter name, which needs to match with this guy here. Sorry, this guy here, otherwise it fails. By the way, is the code fine to read that? Cool. All right, so let me go back here. So I can set up the authorization level that I set up before. I can set up a custom routing if I want to. And that's pretty much it. The output is just the result of the function, pretty much. All right, so in the manage, I've got a few flags that I can set. So to disable the function, I can delete. I can generate some keys if I want. And in the monitor, it will list every time that the function ran. Okay, so if we just wait for a couple of seconds, it's gonna bring all the times that it just ran. So I just code twice here using add in this other tab. So that's what it brought here. Okay, so other than that, on the left-hand side, you can still test the function. So you don't need to open another tab. So you can go and test here and run the function. It's going to bring the status code, which is 200 for OK. If I don't pass anything here, it's going to bring me a 400 bad request. And I can also view all the files that were created when I created a function, right? Which one of them is the run.csx, which is the code itself. And one is the function.json, which is a representation of that UI that we just saw, with all the inputs, outputs, and some of the flags to disable the function and some of others. Cool, so that's how you create a function using the portal. And how do we do that? Using the CLI, right? Yesterday I was at the Brisbane user group, and I tried to run the CLI instead, which is Azure Functions CLI. And they just changed yesterday to Azure Functions Core Tools, which kind of broke my whole demo yesterday. So I hope it doesn't break today. So let's go and give it a try. Okay, so the command to install that would be npm install or I globally and Azure Functions Core Tools, which I'm not going to run to avoid any headaches. All right, so I'm going to create a folder here called Azure Functions Demo. Okay, so I got into the folder. And after I install that npm package, what I'll have is this command here, func, which is going to give me a bunch of options. So I can create a function, I can initiate the function app, I can connect to Azure, and a few other stuff. Okay? So to initiate the function app here, I'll use func init, which is basically going to create my function app, right? And it also going to initialize my Git repository. So let's have a look at my folder now in VS Code. All right, so here you see that it created a git ignore, some VS Code folder with a few settings, the host file, empty, and some local settings. All right, that's pretty much it. And now I want to create the exact same function, but using the CLI. So let's give it a try. Func new. Okay, so as soon as I hit that, what's going to come up is the same sort of workflow that we saw in the portal. So I choose the language, and then the template, and then give it a name. All right, I will use C# for this one, and then I'm going to use the same template, which is the HP trigger. And I'll give it a name. CLI or Core Tools. Okay, so after I run that, you see that it created a bunch of files and also created a folder here. Okay, so if I go to that folder, you see the function.json, which are all the inputs and outputs. A README file on how to use that function, the function itself, which is the code, and a sample data on how to use that function. All right, so now that we created the function, let's try to run that. And to run, it's quite simple. It's just func run and the name of the function, HP trigger from Core Tools. So as soon as I do that, it's going to start the host, and it's going to start the function. So the host is going to start listening for that request, so the function can run. Okay, so let's go and try to run that in the browser. So let me just bring the URL across here. Oh, no? Ah, here you go. That's the URL. Okay, so let me try to run that. Cool. So the function is running locally. Okay. So if I pass my name, oops. Cool. So it's running. Any questions so far? No?
Do you get compile time checking in VS Code?
Sorry?
Do you get compile time checks in VS Code?
If you get compile checking VS Code, you mean debugging?
Yeah.
You cannot debug right now C# code in VS Code, but you can debug in Visual Studio, and I'm going to show you how to do it in Visual Studio. You can debug JavaScript code in VS Code if you want. So if you create a function using JavaScript, you can just debug. Yeah. Okay, so all right. I created a function, and now let's debug. Okay, so if you want to debug that using Visual Studio, you have to download the Azure Functions tools, which is this link here. It is available for 2015 and 17. So if you want to give it a try, and let's have a look on how that works. Okay, I'm just going to start Visual Studio. Should have done that before, but hopefully we'll have time.
While it's starting, right, connecting it with the previous demo, can we write test cases on this? Not like what is there in on the portal one, but just standalone, right? So different like a test solution.
So the function, I wouldn't say no, you can, but the function was created was designed for a lightweight piece of code, right? If you want to create your own business layer, your own DLL, and use that in your Azure Functions, you can. So you can upload your DLL there and just use it. And by doing that, you can run all your tests in your DLL. So if the plan is to test your functionality, you can test everything in your DLL and then just use in Azure Functions, which was pretty much what Jason was covering. So if you have a business layer in between, you really don't need to test the controller, right? So you can test only the business layer and be done with that. So if you have all the testing for the business layer, you don't really need to test the function because the function is just calling that business layer.
Yeah, not like a business layer, but just the function itself, right? Because like over the time you may be making some changes and things, and you just want to make sure like nothing is broken and things. So like just write some.
Yeah, you can test locally,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm not going to cover that today.
Yeah,
but you can definitely do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so I just stopped that host from running, and I'm going to open that same solution that I had there on Visual Studio. All right, so let me find that file. Okay. Can you see that right? Okay. So the plan is to debug this code when I run the function, right? And it's quite simple actually. When you use the func run and then the name of the function, this is to run a single function within your function app, right? But if you want to run the whole function app, the command is a bit different. Is host start, right? So by doing that, you run the whole function app. And to debug, it's just debug yes. And as soon as I do that, I'm going to get a prompt to run that function app in an instance of Visual Studio. So I'm going to be able to choose what instance. If it's probably pretty hard to read that, but I can run on a new instance of Visual Studio 2015, 17, or the instance that I already have open. Okay, so I can click on OK. It's going to come into breaking mode here. And now it's listening. So let's just put a breakpoint here. And let's see if that's gonna work. So as soon as I refresh that, I should hit that breakpoint. Cool. All right, so I'm debugging. I can check the value inside the variables. Okay, and I can go ahead and run the function. Easy? Cool. Before I go ahead and publish this function to the portal, one thing that I want to cover is I had a question yesterday about what if you want to share some code in your Azure function, right? So what if you have multiple functions and you want to execute the same code? Let's say you want to get that request and you want to process something before it goes ahead, right? To check if the request is valid, to check if anything is there, basically. So let's go and let's put some of these logic here in a single file, and let's reuse that in multiple functions, shall we? Okay, so let's go to VS Code. And what am I going to do here? I'm going to create a folder called shared, and I'm going to create a helper.csx. Okay, and what I'm gonna do here is just a single method, static async task get name. And what I'm gonna bring out of here will be this request. Does that sound all right? Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get all this code and I'm gonna move to that other file. Does that make sense? And what I'll do here is var name equal await get name and send the request. Is that gonna work? No. Yeah, probably not. All right, so I have an extra thing to do here. I have to load that file. So load shared helper.csx. Is that gonna work now? No? All right, so let's give it a try. But before I try that, let me change these to something else. Helper says hello. Because otherwise, if I refresh that, it's gonna look hello Thiago, and can't prove anything, right? Okay, so let's run that again. I'm just gonna stop this one, and I'm gonna run the function using that other method, host start, without debugging.
Are you not returning anything from the function? The helper one? Are you returning something?
So the helper is doing the same thing that the function itself was doing before. So the helper is basically getting the request, reading the parameters of the request, getting the name either from the body if you're running using post, or from the query string if you're running get. Okay, so it's doing just that. So the function, that helper method is just grabbing the name out of the request and sending it back.
Return, right? It has to, you should have a return statement.
Have I missed the return? Ha, so it's not gonna work. That's true. All right, so let's just run that. Ha, it didn't run. I was testing you guys. Okay, so I do have to return the name here. Okay, so let's stop that and let's start it again. Still gonna run now? It did. Okay. All right, so the same way you can load a single file, you can also load the whole DLL. I'm not gonna demonstrate that right now, but you can do it. So you can load the whole DLL or a NuGet package and run that inside your function. Okay? It's basically gonna change that to something like this, but I'm not gonna cover that today.
So if you change your helper CSX
Mm-hmm.
and save it
while running.
while running, don't you have to also, or you used to have to kind of rerun or recompile something, you had your HTTP trigger from...
But I did. I didn't recompile, but I did stop the host and start again.
Because I would have done the same thing.
Yeah, I did do that.
Can you probably run this helper method directly in the URL?
No, because it's not a function. It's just a helper.
What is the difference?
The difference is, sorry, the question was, can we run the helper method directly using the URL? You can't because it's not a functions, right? So if you go to the function.json, that's what defines that as a function. Does that make sense? So you don't have any binding for that helper method.
But where's the function name here in this file? Request?
In this file here, there is no function name in this file. There is in the folder. That's the function name.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so I can create a function using the CLI or core tools. I can debug, and now I need to publish that. All right, so there are multiple ways to publish your function, and I'm going to cover a few of them, right? So let me just change that back to here, publishing. Okay, let's go back. All right, so let's go to the portal. In a real life situation, what I would do is publish my code into a Git repository and configure continuous deployment, right? And the way I would configure that in here would be go to my function app, platform features, deployment options, and then what I would do is setting up a new deployment, getting my source code from whatever source I have. Let's try GitHub. And then I would choose a project, the branch, and I would hit OK. I'm not gonna do that right now because it might take some time, and I want to cover the rest of the publishing methods. Okay, so I'm gonna cancel that. Okay, so what I want to do here is I want to do the same using the CLI to publish as well, right? So I use the CLI to create, to debug, and I want to use to deploy. All right, so I'm just gonna stop these. Let me clear that for a sec. And the command for that would be func Azure Function App and publish. Okay, so after I create this whole command here, I need to pass the function name, which is demo Sydney, and run. While this is running, anyone has any question?
If you have 50 functions, how do you manage all the how do you manage it and understand managing?
If you have 50 functions, how will you manage what? Sorry.
How would you try to understand what's happening and manage the app?
In which way? The deployment step, you mean?
The maintainability.
You would have 50 functions, really. And if you're running a single function and it's failing, you would recognize straight away which function it is, and then you could either debug the function or troubleshoot using the monitor. Because in the monitor, you can tell every time that ran successfully and it failed. Also, if you have application insights in your function app, you have a more detailed error description as well.
So it doesn't have the, like Service Fabric's got that kind of all singing, all dancing thing where you can publish out to maybe 2 of your 5 nodes, test it's still working on that. It's got all that kind of shenanigans. Functions doesn't have that.
Yeah, no, it's a more simplified version. Yeah. Okay, so it finished deploying. So you can see here getting publishing info, getting directory, uploading, and uploaded. Okay, so if we go back to the portal and refresh that, I should get my function from core tools, which is this one. Okay, so it's using that helper method, and I can run that. So let's get a function URL, and I'm going to run in a new tab. Okay, so it's failing because I'm not passing the name. Helper says hello. Cool, so it's published now. But yesterday I had a different question, right? What if you want to get the Git repository from Azure Functions? So let's say you create your function using the portal, and instead of just pushing whatever you have in your local repository to the portal, you want to bring that repository back locally. Does that make sense? Because it is a good repository that's in Azure Function, right? So you can connect to that remote repository in Azure Function. So let's give it a try. That might take a bit longer, but it's definitely worth it.
So before you go on, where is the shared function located now?
That's a very good question. You can't see that in the UI here, but you can see here. If we launch this app service editor, which is pretty much VS Code in the browser, you can navigate through all the files within the function app. So while this is loading, just remind me if I don't remember to come back to this tab here. Let's go and configure the credential to connect to this remote repository, right?
Sorry, before you go ahead, sorry.
Mhm.
So if I want to write that the same function, right, say helper one in this portal,
Mhm.
so I can do that, right? And can I see it over here, or how would it work then?
Sorry.
If I want to write the helper function, right? We wrote that helper function in VS Code,
Mm-hmm.
but if I want to write that helper function in portal,
Yeah, I'll show you right now.
okay.
I'm just loading that in a different tab.
Okay.
So yeah, the question was if you want to write the helper function in here in the browser. Yeah, I'll actually load it. So I'll show you that here. All right, so that's a version of VS Code in the browser. So you can see the whole structure here. So let me just cool. All right, so you can see the whole structure here as if it was using the client application, right? So you have the function that I wrote and published, the function that I created using the portal, and I have the shared folder here with the helper. So if you want to create more files, you can just go here. You can probably right-click, string CSX, and you can start doing some funky stuff if you want.
Like my question was mainly like not in VSTS, but just in the portal itself, right? Where we created the function itself. And you know where we had this run CSX.
Yeah.
So can we just add another folder there and write it there?
So that's
Over here.
just
right?
keep in mind that that's the portal.
Yeah, yeah.
So you open the editor,
Yeah.
VS Code in the portal. So from the portal. So that's all running from the browser. And in here,
yeah.
what's gonna do? It's gonna read everything from that folder down. It's not gonna read anything outside that folder. You can create a helper class or a helper function within that folder if you want.
Yeah.
So you can just go and create a file here, add, but you can't create outside the folder. Because this UI is gonna read that folder specifically.
Just folder only, not
Yeah.
the helper.
No, because the helper is outside.
Outside,
Yeah.
okay.
But if you want to create a file here,
Yeah, okay.
you can just feel free and create a file here. Does that answer your question? Cool. All right, so I'm gonna close that. So you happy with this Visual Studio code here in the browser?
Just one thing in my mind is that this helper, which is outside of the function, does it break the concept of microservices?
The function would. So if
No, I mean this helper actually is not a
Mhm.
function, but we still depend on this. So it's just scratching the concept of microservices.
so the question was if the helper would bring the concept of microservices,
I
right?
guess they're no longer atomic, if you know what I mean, because they kind of got a shared kind of thing.
Yes, but if you have a shared functionality, why not use it?
Yeah, I agree.
Right? And it doesn't mean that it's not microservice anymore. So let's say that one service is responsible for sending an email, and you need that string to bring and build the email for you. But you have another one that's responsible for sending SMSs, and you need the same helper to build a different text to send the SMS. So you would share the helper, but you would use two different functions to do completely different stuff.
Yeah, but what I expect is this helper should be another function which you can directly call.
You could,
You know what I mean?
you could, but then it wouldn't be async. It would be it wouldn't be synchronously. It would be asynchronously. And then this way, you would wait for that function to finish, and then you run your function, which would be more expensive because you would wait one function to finish for the other function to start. If you want to run something like that, you're better off using a storage queue or service bus or anything like that. So you start a function, you need another function to process something. You just put in a queue and forget about it. The other function will deal with whatever you put in the queue. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right, so I'm just going to close this one here. And what I'm going to cover is GitHub repository. So let's, not GitHub, Git repository. All right, so let's go to my function app, platform features, and let's go to deployment credentials. So I need to do that so I'm able to connect to my function repository. Right, so I'm just gonna create a credential here. So it's used to both Git and FTP if you want. I'm gonna use that for Git, so save that. And I'll go back here to my CLI. Let me clear that. And I will use func Azure function app. And let's give it a list here. All right, so that's going to list all the function apps that I have in my Azure subscription. And I'm only doing that so I can get that Git repository URL. Okay, so this is the one that I just created. Cool. And what I'll do, I'm going to put in the same folder here because it's going to create a separate folder. So let me just. Right, so the Git repository, no, it's here. I'll create another folder. Right, cd. I'll put in this folder. Right, so git clone, and I'll pass that URL. Because I just created the credential, it's gonna prompt to put my username and password, right? So, if I remember right, Thiago Demo Sydney. Okay, so while this is cloning, it might take a few seconds to a minute. Anyone has any question? Nope? Cool. All right, so that shouldn't take too long, I hope. But what I want to achieve here is I want to clone that whole repository that I saw in my VS Code in the browser. And I want to make some changes so I can modify that HP trigger from Portal to use the same shared function. That make sense? And push it back. Because right now, if we have a look at the Portal, all we have is this core tools trigger, which is using the helper, and from Portal, which is not using the helper. So I'm going to make change to this one, and I'm going to push it back just to see how it works. All right, so okay, that's empty, and that's odd. Okay. All right, demo failed. Oh, no, he is. Oh, he is failed. Okay, I'm gonna use another repository that I have here, if I still have it. Oops. I'll try the last time here if I don't have it. Yeah, for some reason I didn't like it. Alright, so let me try another repository. And I'm going to use this one instead. Git clone and this one. Already entered the credentials for this one, so that should come across. Hopefully not taking too long. Any questions? Nope. Okay. All right, I'm not going to wait for that because we might be running out of time. Otherwise, I won't be able to cover proxy and slots. If that finishes before proxy and slots, I'll come back to that. Okay, so proxies and slots. Let me go to the portal again. Let's gonna cover a bit of the proxies. So in here, under the function app, we have the proxies and slots, right? And the proxy is basically a proxy, right? So you can get an endpoint to respond to a different endpoint, right? So you can enter a URL for your function. So let's say that you want to access your function using a different URL. You can use that. I wouldn't suggest that because all the routing you can do through your function itself. The best use cases that I found for that was first calls. So let's say that you have an external resource that you have no power over it at all, and you want to access that external resource using JavaScript, right? And that API, that external API doesn't support calls. So anytime you call using JavaScript, it's gonna block because you're trying to access from a different domain. Okay, so if you wanna use that, what you can do is you set up your proxy here, or whatever name you wanna give it, and you set up calls in your function app. So you're allowing your domain to talk to your function app, and the function app will be responsible to get that external resource in. Does that make sense? Good. That's one way. And while I was giving the same talk in Brisbane, a guy came back to me and said, you can do something else as well. So let's say you want to create a gateway for your functions and create a single token for multiple functions, right? I thought it was a brilliant idea because all your functions, each one of them has a different token, right? And what you can do is you can create a proxy, a single proxy, point to several functions, and create a single token and hand over to your client. Right, here you go. You can access these 4 functions using the same token. Just pretty cool. But again, I think the best one would be the cross origin resource sharing. But anyway, so that was proxies and slots. Okay, slots. I'm gonna use a different function app to demonstrate. Because slots, they're basically a different environment for your function, right? So let's say you create a dev slot for your function. It's basically going to be a copy of your function. So you're working on that slot, and all of a sudden you want to switch from dev to production. So you're happy with your dev environment, you want to switch to production. You can just swap, and it's going to do some DNS rewriting and stuff like that. And it's almost 0 downtime. Actually, they claim it's 0 downtime. So let's give it a try and see if we can experience that. So I'm going to use an existing function app that I have here. Which I have a dev slot. And what I want to show okay, so if I run this function here, let me just close these other ones. If I get this function URL, I'm just going to open side by side so we can see that happening. Okay, so it's asking for name. Okay, so hello, Thiago. Okay, so that's the exact same function that I showed you before. And in my dev environment, the same function, the same name, is doing the same thing, but instead of saying hello, it's saying oi, which is hello in Portuguese. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to swap, and I'm going to keep hitting F5 here. So if there is any 500 or 404, it means there is a downtime. Otherwise, yeah, it's true, 0 downtime. Something that I experienced, and I don't know when they're going to fix that, is all the buttons here are grayed out. And for some reason, that doesn't come up. So I went to Stack Overflow and asked, what the heck's going on? So people say, you can use that. Go to App Service, go to your function, click here, and you have all the options. So it's a different way of doing the same thing. So I can swap, and that's gonna basically get my production source and swap with my dev environment. Okay, so you guys ready? Hope it doesn't break. All right, okay. And I'm gonna refresh. Hopefully that's not gonna take too long, and that hello should switch to OA without a 500 or 404. Any questions? Sorry?
What happens if you have a network issue at that time?
Then my demo is
While you want to do is like swapping, right, with the staging, with the production.
Yeah.
And if a network issue, then it's like, shit, right?
The network, you mean our network or Azure's network?
Just your.
Cool. All right, so 0 downtime. So your question was, what if your network is down?
Yeah.
All right, so your network really doesn't matter because everything is happening in the portal.
Yeah, but like when you want to click like swap button, right, and process whatever is happening, and suddenly your internet drops.
It doesn't matter. You already sent the command to Azure.
Tiny little message.
Yeah, it's not, if your network drops before you send a message, nothing's gonna happen. If it was after you send a message, it's gonna happen anyway. Unless the whole Azure goes down,
Yeah.
then I think the Azure function will be the smallest of your problems. Yeah.
How can you do this deployment to different environments through the code?
Okay, so how can we do deployment with these two environments through the code? Okay, so you can configure continuous deployment to any slot, right? So if you have a dev environment and you wanna always deploy to that instance, you can configure continuous deployment to that slot. As soon as you're happy with that, then you switch to the production slot.
Is that how you would do it? You'd have like your final staging would be your check-in to
Yeah.
and then you do it manually?
The way I would do, I would create a separate environment altogether for dev, for pre-prod, and for production. Production staging being a slot of production, but the dev would be a completely separate environment. So the deployment for dev would happen separately, so I can test that, and I would deploy in a different stage to pre-prod. As soon as I'm happy with pre-prod, I just
When you
switch.
trigger that on what, like a merge or after
So,
the other branch?
well, at SSW we use Octopus Deploy, right? Most of the time. Anyone use Octopus Deploy here? Cool. Yeah, check it out. It's pretty cool. So it's a tool to deploy your whatever you have, whatever code you have. So you can deploy using Octopus Deploy. You can deploy your function to a function app, right? So if you have your code in a Git repository and you want to build a DLL to push that within your function app as well to do testing, whatever, you publish that, you deploy that to your dev environment in the cloud. You give to how many testers you have to test that, and anyone can break. Good, fine. If it's tested, send to pre-prod.
Via
Using
Octopus.
Octopus.
But not via, so that, to move it to pre-prod, you haven't had to merge it up to another Git
No, you would.
branch, right?
No, you would
all
push.
outside.
Octopus would just go and push to pre-prod. In pre-prod will be basically all right. Final testing. Right, all the testers already tested the solution. It's working fine. It's in pre-prod. Give to the business. The business will test. All right, good to go. Swap, and then it goes to production. And then you have zero downtime. If you deploy to production using Octopus, you are gonna have downtime. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if you do the swap,
You won't.
yeah.
So if you deploy to pre-prod, and pre-prod is a slot of production, you can just deploy to the pre-prod and then swap.
Does Octopus do the swap? Has it got that kind of, is it
Uh,
integrated with this?
I'm pretty sure it doesn't
Right.
because
So you have to
it's
come here to do your swap.
it's still preview, and even the Azure Functions CLI can't deploy to a slot yet. So it might come later, but right now I don't think it's there. Might be wrong. I'll check it out.
And just one more, like when you do swap, right?
Hmm.
And so if you have like some, for example, connection strings or some sort of thing, so what will happen?
That's the beauty of it. It doesn't swap any of the settings. It just swaps the code, which would be a pretty big deal if you swap the connection strings, because you're in dev and then you're in production, you screwed the whole thing. No, it doesn't change any of the configuration. It just only swaps the code and the DNS.
So the URL won't be changed.
No. So that's why I was pressing F5, because I was using the same URL. As soon as it was done, over.
It's a bit dangerous though. You don't know what is in your code, but you have same URL.
No, you do.
No,
I
you
but
know.
you change it. Somebody can change it manually, but you still get the same URL.
Yeah, but if somebody has access to do that, somebody needs to be a bit careful. Yeah,
Well, someone's got to have the permission to do it.
yeah. Yeah, it's same for Octopus. If they press the button, it's gone, right? If they have permission to deploy to production, it's gone. They can screw the whole website or any service. All right.
I have a question from Pauline on the live stream. She asked, is the Azure Functions execution log stored indefinitely, or does it get cleared out eventually?
That's a very good question. I would sorry, I'll just I'll get the question again. So the question was if the logs of the Azure Functions will be cleared, or if it's stored indefinitely.
I think it's definite.
It's indefinite.
I'd heard a while ago that it
All
was
right.
indefinite. And
Okay.
you could create another function that would periodically
Clear. All right. I would assume it wouldn't be indefinite, but yeah.
No, it's not indefinite. I think it's definite. I think for a month or some period of time, like 28 days, 30 days or something.
Okay.
There's some, not 100%.
All right. I really don't know the answer for that, but I'll check it out. I would be pretty surprised if it was indefinite, because the logs can grow pretty quickly.
It's just built on top of the app service model.
Mm-hmm.
And I assume that's got the same thing, the same logging. So it's probably got the same rules.
Yeah, it is built on top of app service, but it might have a different configuration. But yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
Yeah, And if it just keeps on building, rather than it can use your Azure storage thing as well, so they wouldn't want it as well, because then otherwise you start paying for that one, Azure storage user.
Storage is pretty cheap though.
Yeah, but still,
Yeah.
you're just paying unnecessarily
Yeah.
for things, and which you don't need. Like after 6 months ago, what happened, you don't want to know.
Sometimes you do. Sometimes you do.
It's like very
Yeah.
rare case.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I'll come back to that. Okay, so if we're lucky, we finish here. All right, so we've got the Git repository cloned from my external resource locally here. And now I'm able to get that, right? So let me go and navigate to my function demo. Canberra? Come on, can have that.
Spell function.
That helps. There you go. All right, so let me open that with VS Code. Okay, so that's the function that I'm using right now, I think. So that's the one. Okay, so what I want to achieve here is to be able to get the repository from Git, from my function app in the portal, clone that locally, make changes, push it back, and see if that's gonna reflect in my portal here, in my function app in the portal. All right, so I've got two functions. I've got the function, the HP trigger from CLI, which for today's demo I created from core tools. I also have the portal, the HP trigger from portal. I've got the shared folder, which is using the helper. And I've got these two functions. So let's change something here. Okay, so this from portal, I'll just confirm that's the case here. That's cool. All right, I just swapped this lot here. So I got a different source code here, but I'll make changes anyway. Okay, so let's go to this CLI. I assume it's the same one, the same source code. All right, so it's pretty much the same here. And here, it's saying OI instead. All right, so OI usando o ajudante. All right, hi using the helper. Okay, I'm saving that. And I'm going to do a git commit all message changing message. Okay, is that clear what I just did? I'm just committing that locally, and now I'm gonna push to my remote repository. Okay, so git push. Cool. So what that's gonna do is gonna connect to my Canberra account. So let's try that again. Thiago demo Canberra.
Are you only committing to the active slot?
Sorry?
Are you only committing to the updating the active slot?
I'm just, if I'm updating only the active slot. I'm updating the production function app. The function app is not a slot. So I'm connecting to the function app directly, to the Git repository in my function app.
So you won't be able to swap that?
I'll be able to swap that with whatever I have in my slot. But if I do that, I'll get the whatever code I had there, and I'm gonna override. All right. Okay, so let's try that again. So what's my username? Thiago demo Canberra. I'll try that one more time. It's not helping. I changed demo city. All right. Oh my god. All right, so let's try that again. Thiago demo Sydney 1. Okay. All right, so while this is happening, anyone has any question? No? All right, so while this is happening, I'm just gonna move back to my slide deck because we might be running out of time, or if we are not very over time. And let's have a look at the resources. So I covered pretty much everything I wanted. I'm just gonna go back to that single command that I just ran. But for today, if you want to start using Azure Functions, just go to functions.azure.com. You're gonna find a pretty big button to try it out. It's free. You don't need an Azure subscription. Just go there, log in with your Facebook account, your Google account, Microsoft account, and just give it a try. It's free. After you're done with that, if you have no idea where to start or what sort of function you want to create, go to functionschallenge.azure.com. That's going to give you some ideas, and you're going to have some challenge to create a function, which is pretty nice. And also the Microsoft Docs. Just go there. You're going to find step-by-step on how to debug, how to deploy, how to create functions using the CLI and stuff like that. And also, we are running a Azure one-day event in Sydney, Brisbane, and Melbourne. I think in the Gold Coast as well. Anyway, in Sydney is in September, the 15th of September. It's a Friday. It's $49 for the whole day. So we're running that. So if you're interested, come along. It's going to be pretty nice. All right, so let's have a look again here to see if it's finished. Okay, so it's comparing the files. Let's go back here. And let's have a summary of what we did today, right? So in summary, we had a look at serverless, a bit of the pros and cons of serverless. And we had a look at Azure Functions. So I showed you how to get started, different ways to create a function using either the portal or the CLI or core tools, how they call it right now. Debugging with Visual Studio. You can debug with VS Code, but only JavaScript for now. And I showed you how to publish different methods to publish your function, and also some use cases that I covered today. Okay, and that's it for today. Thank you very much.